Welcome back, everybody. Co-Creation Nation. I'm so glad that you are here joining us. I'm Lauren Hall, and with me, as always, my awesome co-host, Troy Blankenship. Troy, how you doing?
Hey, I'm fine. How are you?
Doing good. It's Valentine's. Happy Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. And we're here on our I don't know, what is this, our 14th, 15th show? I don't
Oh,
know.
it is the 14th.
Is it the 14th show?
How
Wow.
fitting. Yes,
How
so cute.
coincidental. Well, we planned it that way. Let's
Yeah,
just pass it off like that.
definitely. Well, in our 11th episode, we found the 11:11 time slot. And today I've been hitting a lot of synchronizations with like looking at my phone at the right times. And I've started taking pictures of all of those, like little screenshots. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Maybe a collage.
Wait, so you're saying that you take screenshots that when your time on your phone is
Yeah. So
like
today I hit
3:33?
11:11 a.m.,
Yeah,
12:34, noon time, and then 4:44. And I think that was all I got so far.
Like
And I just,
so you will not believe this that I'm going to tell you this, but I do the same exact thing.
what?
I don't do it now. I see a lot of those, right? But I don't take a picture all the time. But I do it, and I have done it in the past. And then it's like one of those things where it's like if I look at the clock and it's like 3:33, for example,
Mhm.
I'll wait if it hasn't already passed. I'll wait until it's like 3:33 and then 33 seconds,
Mhm.
and then I'll take the picture of it.
See, I
So
don't
I
have.
thought I thought I was the only one that did that. So now and this is, I mean, I'm just finding out that this about you for the first time. So that's great.
It's funny. I mean, I guess we'll
We think
see. Maybe
alike.
it's just a thing hypnotists do, since we've got an awesome hypnotist. I can't wait to be interviewing. But you had said the 10:10 time, and I have started to see that. So I think we're in sync and we're on a roll. And I hope you guys out there listening are getting that value. That we're helping you be reminded to check into the little times of life and be present to them.
That's really cool that you do that too. So yeah, so we're more similar. I mean, with what I learn, more and more about you. I feel like that we should do something together. Maybe we should start our own podcast.
Or merch.
Yeah, yeah, our merch. It's funny. Do you like with the times, right? Because you were mentioning that a second ago. Do you do like sometimes I catch the time it's like 12:34, like 1, 2, 3, 4. I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
my
for me.
favorite.
That's a special time too.
That's the one. So that was the one that I that was one of three that I got today, and that's one of
Yeah,
my favorite times. Or
yeah,
I like it a lot.
yeah,
I
or
like
two
both of
thirty
them.
four or
Yeah.
something like that.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
It's funny
Well,
that
go
we both
us.
do that.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's like, and I think I mentioned this before in a previous podcast, but like when I see a time like that, right? It's like I pause for that minute, right? I might close my eyes, I might not, but I'll take a couple deep breaths and I'll just try to be grounded in that moment. That's just what I've done for years and years and years. Do you do that too?
Not as, let's say, patiently as you do. Usually, I'm in the car and I don't know. I book my life pretty to the minute. So, um, so I
So that's
should
why you're
get
the great Lauren Hall.
more of those seconds. But I definitely always, even on dreary days like it has been today, take a moment to be present to the sun and just sort of honor, being alive, and that we can, or that I can breathe. I just, I teach gratitude, presencing to people, and so that definitely is a part of my life. I guess I don't do it to the minutes, but when you had said that you wait for the 33rd second and then take that break, I did like how much heart and passion you had about that, and I wanted that routine, so I'll start doing that.
Well, if I can. I mean, I can't do that if I'm driving a vehicle, obviously. But if I'm sitting here in my home office, I can do that.
Mhm.
These are special moments, and I'm not trying to drive off the road when I see that time. But yeah, no, it's I don't know. I've been doing that for years, and I just and it's funny too because I feel like more and more people will say, hey, don't there special times? Like they come. I mean, I'll have conversations more often with people, and they'll just say, oh, it's like, look, it's 11:11 or something like that, or it's 2:22. So I know that there's people out there that, I mean, really take some significance into that.
Well, I think, yeah, there are significances that can be inferred, and as hypnotist, right, it's all about the anchoring that you have.
Sure.
And I had kind of heard or come to this idea that the more you take a time to moment the special things, then more special things, like the law of attraction, right? It just attracts more in, and you'll notice more. And I think we'll, when we talk soon with Jennifer, we're going to find out about synchronicities and kind of a bigger picture that is happening out there.
Yeah,
right?
well, exactly, and that's why we brought her on. So let me introduce our guest, Jennifer Catlin. She is a certified hypnotherapy instructor, a hypnotherapist, and mindfulness teacher based in North Carolina. She began her career as a school psychologist before venturing into the field of client-centered transpersonal hypnotherapy. And I've worked with her in the past, so I can completely attest to this. I mean, she's completely passionate about helping her clients and about helping individuals process their unresolved emotions and just allowing them to live, their best life. Um, and I think that's I mean, especially in the day and age that we live in, right? Right now, with what we just went through in 2020, that could be that's so important, and it's such a wonderful service that she provides. So let me bring her in. Jennifer, how are you? It's nice to have you with us here on Co-Creation Nation.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you.
Happy Valentine's Day, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks. I just, it's been COVID season and just kind of such a strange year. So I almost forgot, except for the little gifts, got for kids this morning. What a perfect day though, right? Because a lot of what we'll get into is really all about unconditional love and universal stuff we'll talk about. And I loved listening to you talk about the numbers because I noticed them too. I have not taken pictures yet though, so maybe I need to start doing that.
We'll just
Well,
take some pictures.
Speaking about numbers, so Jennifer, you're on with us on February 14th on our 14th episode.
That's awesome.
Like we were just saying, I mean, it's very fortuitous.
Yeah, synchronistic. Love it.
I can't wait to talk about universal love because all day today I have been really taking that slow time, Troy, to just honor that, in my opinion, which the highest vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, maybe that's a good place to start. So Jennifer, when people, I mean, because you run your practice and you deal primarily with past life and life between lives. Is that right?
Yes and no. So ultimately, that's where it's leading is people. I typically work with people who have an interest in spiritual exploration and connecting with their higher self, their soul self. People call it something different. But a lot of times, not for everyone, but a lot of times we need to start with some current life processing around childhood, doing some inner child work, a lot of worthiness and inner critic stuff that we might need to work through. That voice that says that we all have to some extent that it is triggered in different situations. That inner voice that says, I'm not good enough, or I need to be better, I need to do better. Yeah, we'll work through that a lot of times first, depending on the situation, and then eventually work our way into past life exploration and also life between lives hypnosis.
And that inner voice, it's very common these days, is it not?
So common. Yeah. And I think even those of us who have, I had a very strong inner critic that I worked through for a while years ago. And now what I tell people is it's not a matter of that voice going away completely. 100% of the time, you can work through it and cultivate a different relationship with it. It's more a matter of when you work through it, you're still a human being. So you're still going to have a full range of thoughts and emotions throughout your life. It's more like when it shows up, how are you relating to it? Is there that internal battle going on? It can be there, but you don't have to believe everything it says. You don't have to identify with it. You can make friends with it, be buddies, and then it'll show up less. And when it does show up, oftentimes it's less intense and it doesn't stay as long. But yeah, we're all going to experience moments where it activates, and it can be helpful in some situations too. We don't want it to go away completely. It can motivate us to get things done.
I'm curious, in the start of the career, you were a school psychologist.
Uh-huh.
Was what you were doing then any bit similar to what you're doing now?
As a whole, no. I was doing a lot of psychoeducational assessment, especially for kids pre-K through grade 12, to determine eligibility for special education services or ways that we could meet their learning needs, whether they needed a gifted program or some support. But I also was teaching yoga at the time and mindfulness to both kids and adults. And in the schools, I was actually working in New York State at the time. And what school psychologists do there is different than here in North Carolina.
Mhm.
So here in North Carolina, it's mostly just the testing portion of it. In New York, you're based in a school and not traveling around. So you get to know the parents, the kids, the teachers really well. And there is a counseling component as well. So I was seeing kids for IEP, which is a special ed plan mandated counseling, as well as groups. And I used a lot of guided imagery, which ultimately was hypnosis. I just didn't know it at the time. We were, bringing kids into that, and kids connect so fast. They would just eat it up at all ages. They loved it. And so I was using that a lot. I was also using it in my yoga teaching. So I think it did prepare me. I just didn't know it. And I would do a lot of health and wellness programs for different schools as well, like large scale group programs. And it was doing a lot of this stuff just in a different way.
Yeah, so I loved it. It was like ego strengthening, but it wasn't this model that you have now that seems very effective, which is um, reorienting that critic.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it can really be essential in some cases, especially when it's really, really strong in people. Sometimes that can create blocks to being able to open into a state of expanded consciousness. And so, again, it depends. Not everybody needs that. Um, some people, we work our way backward, but other people um, can't access and open up until they work with that first.
Mhm.
And so it depends. Maybe 30-40% of the time we'll start there. And then the other times we can just go straight forward
Yeah.
with the past life regression session. Yeah.
When you were the school psychologist, and doing these things, was it even on your radar? Hypnosis, past life regression, life between lies,
No, I didn't even know what hypnosis was. I was using it,
right?
but I didn't know what it was. And I had yoga teacher training. And so I was connecting with that state, but I was not, it was more for physical and benefits as well as stress management. I had never heard of the term beyond what a lot of people think hypnosis is, stage or entertainment hypnosis, where they're going to make me cluck like a chicken kind of thing. I had no idea. So no, it wasn't at all on my radar.
Yeah.
So
So
fun.
when someone comes to you, right, and for some people maybe who are going to be listening to this show, right, they're thinking past life regression, life between lives. That's so far out there. That's so woo woo,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
What would you do? But on the other hand, because I'm in the industry, right? We're all, the three of us are in the industry. We know, and Jen, you know a lot more than the two of us, because this is what you do every day. But I mean, there's a lot of people that are opening up. Whether you want to call it,
Sure.
they're intuitive, they're just being more receptive, they're being curious, whatever it might be, right? So when somebody comes to you, like a typical person wants to work with you and to explore, like how does that process work normally?
When they're coming to me specifically wanting to explore the spiritual realm, or
Or they just are like, I'm kind of curious about this. It's kind of far out for me, but I
mm,
feel like I need to talk to you about it. So I mean, how do you approach this? How do you discuss these things with these people? Because and the reason why I say it like this is because I worked with you,
yeah.
years ago, right? And
Hmm.
I was a client of yours, and I came just with a general kind of sense of curiosity. I knew I needed to find someone like you,
Hmm.
but I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there who might also have that same curiosity, but they don't really know how to define it. They don't know how to explain it. But then now that we have you, and your message here, I'm just trying to figure out, I'm trying to understand, like, what is the message that you would say to someone who might be like myself a couple of years ago, right? And just have that curiosity, but don't really know what the next step is from there.
Yeah, I actually love working with those people because that's where I was at too. When I discovered it, I had some things happening in my life that were opening up that I couldn't explain. And I didn't know what was going on. And somebody handed me a book from Brian Weiss. If anybody's heard of that, there's a book, Many Lives, Many Masters, Many Lives.
Mhm.
And I read that book, and triggered something in me, like a knowing, you have to explore this. And it didn't make any sense to my logical mind. I will say I'm an extremely logical, analytical person. My left brain is very strong. I've also always had a strong intuition. I just, at the time, growing up, I never really gave voice to it or paid attention to it. I went by that left brain. And so I get it. I get it because it didn't make sense to me, but there was a deep knowing inside that I had to, and that was my intuitive self to explore. And so I went on to explore and it changed my life. So if people have a curiosity about it, I just first want to give them a voice to be able to share what it is they're wondering about it, what they've heard about it, to ask any questions. And it's really a matter of just offering a space, a non-judgmental space where they can freely ask whatever it is that they want to ask about that. And anybody can experience this. If you have a strong analytical, logical mind, there are ways we can work with that. I will have people practice with some imagery before the session. It might be meditations and or actual guided imagery, just to practice what this is, because sometimes the books make it sound like people are unconscious or unaware. That's not the case. And so I always want to demystify that and help people to realize what it's going to feel like when they're experiencing this. But then there's also additional ways that we can work with the conscious mind if they find they're having a lot of conscious mind interference, to help it step aside a little bit. Sometimes that includes having to do a clinical session or some kind of session to work directly with the mind first, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people listening, and what would you say to them if what is a past life regression? What is a life between life for those people who are listening who don't know?
Yep. So past life regression is based on the belief that this life we're living now is not the only life we have, that we are energetic, infinite beings that come to experience a life of incarnation to learn lessons and to grow and to experience. It's kind of like if you get deep into it, that we are each an expression of the universe, really. And there is this learning and growth that happens in these lives. And so in the past life regression, we work our way back through time, where we'll work our way back through a couple of earlier childhood memories of happy or neutral memories is where I'm guiding people to. If that's not, if a person has a lot of trauma in their background, there's ways we'll work with that differently. And then we do what's called an in utero or womb regression. This is in the past life regression session. So that's regressing to that time where you're preparing to come to be born in the womb and preparing for this life. And that can be very powerful because there is a belief that our consciousness as we're coming into this life is not so separate from mom's consciousness. And so it can be helpful to go back and disentangle that and bring a sense of empowerment of coming in. Oftentimes, what we find is when people are preparing to, before they come into the womb, it's like their higher self is like, yeah, let's go. They feel super psyched about it. And then we find in the womb, a lot of times it's like, back up. I want to get out of here. Let's reverse it. And it's so interesting to watch that shift happen, because in that space, we can move their awareness, their consciousness forward or backward through time. And we can see the differences that they experience then. And so then once we do some intervention around the womb space, then we'll go into a lifetime that's important for them to know now. And it comes through the subconscious. It doesn't necessarily originate from the subconscious. It's more what Michael Newton termed the superconscious mind, and it will flow through that and from that through the subconscious, so that their conscious mind can then access and make meaning of what's happening. And they'll experience a past life. We'll go through key points of the life, go through the transition or the death. And that's where we can find out some very valuable information in that moment of what Were they thinking? What promises did they made to themselves as a result of having lived that life? And it can tell a lot about what might have been carried forward. And then we'll go into the spirit realm and do some exploration there, and sometimes intervention if needed as well. That's for a past life regression session.
Wow.
What's the life between lives?
The life between lives session is we utilize that same process of going back, although that's not the only way to connect with the spirit realm. I was trained through the Newton Institute, and that's their methodology. And then most of the session is spent in the spirit realm as a soul being or light being in between lifetimes. Like when you're not incarnated, what are you experiencing? And those are lengthy sessions, and I never know where they're going to go.
Sure. Well, how could you?
Right.
I mean, it is what it is.
Probably
Yeah.
one question people might ask is, are your clients talking in tongue or tone?
Yeah. It's not super common, but I have had instances where foreign languages will come through for people, and it's like they can sense there's another language, or if it's before language was developed, they're like, I don't have a language, I'm just grunting. And so they'll just kind of translate to me what it is that they're sensing or experiencing. I think there was one time I'm recalling that somebody did speak in something I couldn't understand, and they had to just translate. Or sometimes people will just hear it in their mind, but your conscious mind is present during the session, so they're able to translate that to me. You just don't want the conscious mind so present that it's getting in the way of what's being received, and they're analyzing everything that's coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and I think you're the perfect person to ask this. The word mindfulness, right? Because you mentioned before in your when you first hopped on here and you're explaining what you do. How would you define mindfulness?
Yeah.
And
So I actually have.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was gonna ask you to define it as to how what you think it means, and then I was also gonna see how it fits in this mindfulness concept into your work.
Yeah. Great question. So I have a mindfulness background, which, I was introduced to mindfulness when I was in graduate school. And it's funny, one of those synchronistic moments, I needed 1 credit in order to graduate. And it happened to be the only time I had a professor who was offering a 1 credit mindfulness course that isn't normally offered. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to take this just to graduate. And that's what set me on the pathway to then exploring yoga, and then, further on to what I'm doing now. So mindfulness, I like to it's more complex than this, but I break it down into 2 parts. The first part is just paying attention to the present moment. So intentionally being present, like what's here for me now. That could be using our senses to explore the environment around us. What colors do I see? Textures do I feel? What sounds do I hear? Taste, smell, or internal. What's present for me right now in my thoughts and feelings. The second part is the hardest part. That is practicing meeting ourselves in the present moment experience with non-judgment and compassion. And so it doesn't mean you're not going to judge the moment or have judging thoughts or feelings of the moment. It means you're not adding additional judgments onto yourself for having judgment, a judgment experience, if that makes sense. So I might be wishing, I might have some experience or an inner critical thought, but I'm not adding additional judgments onto myself for having that inner critical thought.
And how does it fit into your practice and your work?
Yeah, because so much of my work is centered around experiencing a sense of worthiness, which is where we find wholeness and completion within ourselves, and realizing we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and having a human experience means we're going to be imperfect. And so it's about, how can I be okay with that? How can I come to a place of acceptance with that? From a true heart-centered way. It doesn't mean ego. It's about becoming aware of those egoic tendencies we all have. Learning, being able to forgive self and others, while also maintaining healthy boundaries. And it can help a lot with stress management as well, just to learn how to be more present, because we're used to living lives that we're constantly doing instead of being. And so it helps us to cultivate a sense of being. Yeah.
See, I always found it was very, mindfulness is like, it's very subjective to the individual. Do you find that too?
Subjective in what sense?
In terms of how they define it, in
Oh,
terms of what it means to them.
sure. I think the word is out there quite a bit. There are a few mindfulness teachers who developed specific programs that were adapted and can be adapted to the Western way of life. It comes from very traditional ancient Eastern practices, but anybody can utilize it to enhance their life. And so because the word is out there, people, I think it does have a different meaning for each other. But when we're talking more in the educational sense of these programs that were developed, it's more about present moment awareness and then meeting that with non-judgment and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there's a program called MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, that was developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and that has it's an 8-week program that has specific components. And I was trained in the Duke Integrative Medicine mindfulness training for professionals, which uses that model to teach people.
So walk us through what a typical session would be. Somebody comes to you, they're doing, past life regression, they're doing, life between live session, something along these lines. I mean, what is it that you find people are looking to gain, I guess, and experience, number one? And what is the process like for a typical person? Because I tend to agree with you, right? It's almost like when somebody comes to one of us, we have to reframe what the idea of what hypnosis really is. Because somebody might think, oh, like you said, right? I'm gonna, you're gonna make me bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken, or I'm just gonna forget everything and I just come to in a couple hours and I'm gonna be fixed, or things
Yeah,
gonna be
you're gonna
better.
fix me.
Right. And it's not like that. So what is it like? I mean, at least it's not like that in my practice, right? So what is it like in your practice? How is the experience? Like, what if somebody was to contact you and to do one of these things, what would you say to that person? Like, what would they be looking to experience?
Yep. So usually I get two different types of requests. The first might be there's something specific happening in their life and they want to explore that. Potentially through past life regression. Like I have this fear of blah, blah, blah. And I've always had it. I feel like I don't know where it comes from. It doesn't make any sense. Or it might even be a relationship. Like I'm having this issue in a relationship with somebody, or I feel I've met somebody who I feel like I know and I feel super drawn to, and can you help me explore that? So my first step is to find out why they are calling, because the second group of people who tend to call me are more are familiar or have heard of past life regression, and they want to connect with their higher self. Like, I want to know what my purpose is for being here. What is this life about? Curious exploration might be it. So I do want to first know why. What is the objective? And if it's something specific, then I'll do a little more assessment to determine, do we need to do regular clinical session before we go into spiritual work? I don't want to assume that whatever issue they're having is from a past life. And so sometimes it can take a little bit of exploration first before we open up to that. If they're there for curious exploration, for wanting to connect with their higher self or their life purpose, then we'll go oftentimes right into it, depending on the background and how practice goes for them. And then I'll guide them, through that process. So that's the first step.
Is there any downside with, because that made me think of this, that you could take a person into a past life experience and it bring on, a set of problems that compounds to their present life state of problems? I mean, have you noticed any sense of sensitivity around who needs to be at what point of threshold before we might do past life exploration?
Well, it's important a person is grounded enough in their awareness. If there's a lot of trauma in their background and they've never had therapy or something like that, that might be important. It really depends what kind of work we're coming for. If it's curious exploration, it's a little bit less, I don't want to say less important. It's important too, meaning that stuff might get in the way of them opening up, but it doesn't get in the way for everybody. If they're there to resolve something specific, then a lot of times I will start with some inner child work around current life, earlier life processing before we move on. But regardless, I mean, it's really important just to be grounded enough in this reality first to be able to open up. If it's somebody who tends to disassociate a lot or spend a lot of time daydreaming and off in la la land, like I used to do, head floating in the clouds, then we might need to do some work of bringing them in first, dehypnotizing, because they're in that state all the time, before we open up to get anything concrete. It just depends on the specific person. Most people can open to have a successful session, but there are cases that we need to slow down a little bit and work our way and progress there. I found that sessions, people gain something positive from them. So even if a difficult lifetime were to come up, or a traumatic death or something in the lifetime, we're not going to ever open that up without doing some kind of intervention around that to be able to release it, so that they don't have to carry that with them anymore, because those energy imprints can impact, we can carry them forward into our current lifetime and repeat patterns, or sometimes swing in the opposite direction. Where, for example, somebody could have had a lifetime where they were really close to somebody who hurt them, terribly. Yeah. And then they pass and discovered that their higher self, their soul, made this promise that I'm never going to let anybody get close to me again. Mm-hmm. And then they swing in the opposite direction.
Yeah. So you kind of touched it there. I can hear people, I can just imagine our audience is listening to this and they're like, this all sounds so wonderful and so great, man. I can explore my past lives and I can do the life between lives, and all this stuff. But I can just imagine some of our audience thinking, if I go into a past life and if I relive a traumatic experience or a traumatic death, is this going to be painful? Is this going to, drum up some sort of trauma now in my present?
Sure.
What would you say to them?
I would say, if it's done right, no. So no, if there's anything super traumatic happening, one, your conscious mind is always present when you're having these sessions, and it's present there as a safeguard. Again, we don't want it so present that it's interfering with your ability to go with what's coming to you. But a lot of times the conscious mind will have enough awareness that this isn't happening right now. There's enough distance from it. And so there's techniques we can use to gain more distance if needed. If a particularly traumatic death were happening, we can speak. I'm not going to leave people in a moment to experience this pain now. We're moving through it quickly. And people find when they go through that transition, whoa, it's like a sense of freedom and openness and oneness and spaciousness that maybe they've never felt before. And I hear people all the time tell me, this feels so peaceful. I feel at peace. And so it can be really healing in that regard. And at the same time, we often, if there were things that aren't or weren't helpful for that person in that lifetime, then we will, when you're in that soul mind, you're able to access the consciousness of who you were then and who you are now. And so we can work simultaneously with going back into that life and meeting whatever unmet need there was from that time. But we can do that and let their current self know, communicate with that past self, to be able to release whatever is needed. And that just has a significant impact on people's lives now. And people don't even have to necessarily believe in past lives. I've done clinical regression sessions where the goal was not a past life regression. We're just regressing to the source of where something originated for somebody. And I've had people spontaneously regress to past lives. Some people who didn't even believe in that. And then they come up after, they're like, what was that? So that can happen. But I've also had other people regress and suddenly their pain is gone. I don't claim that that works for everybody. It's not a cure. There just have been mysterious things that have happened to people before that have been helpful.
So you mentioned peace a moment ago. When somebody, comes to you and works with you, what do people normally tend to want as an outcome, or what do they report to you? Like when they're walking away, are they talking about, hey, I have a new perspective on things. I feel peaceful. I feel more organized. I feel like my brain fog is lifted. Like, what do you normally tend to hear?
Yeah, I would say all of the above. It depends on a person's specific situation and what's going on in their current life. But oftentimes, it's funny, different things will happen. If it's a relationship thing that became resolved, I hear frequently people will call me and say, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to this person in 10 years. And right after the session, I got a phone call from them. Or there will be forgiveness given and amends made. Or a difficult person will just suddenly just sort of fade away from their life, however that is. So that could happen with relationships. But also, I just hear a lot, people feel lighter and more at peace. Yes, different perspective because they're less identified with this life and like, wow, there is a bigger picture. And this is just one blip in the timeline of my existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can make some of those challenges feel less difficult.
So in your opinion, Jen, I'm just curious because you do this every day. I'm pretty sure our audience would love to know, what do you feel like the purpose is, that we keep coming back here and living all of these lives?
Oh, goodness. That's the ultimate question, isn't it?
Well, you're the expert. I thought maybe you might have some insight.
Well, I have my personal thoughts and beliefs, but I'm never going to claim to know because I don't know. In Michael Newton, who created the Newton Institute, he has since passed a few years ago, but his first book he wrote was Journey of Souls, which highlights he did research for over 40 years with over 7,000 people from all different faith backgrounds to bring them into these deep hypnotic states to determine and ask them questions about the afterlife. And that was, one of the questions. And to this date, nobody has got it. We've had people get fairly close. And Troy, I would consider you one of those, like closer to whatever source is, right? But nobody's like quite gotten to it entirely. There are people who have had near-death experiences who have had very interesting experiences or communication with what they feel is source. So that gets down to like, what is the overall purpose? As individual souls, learning, growth, and we learn by having these life experiences that we could learn without being in a physical state. But everything's energy. And there's a belief that as we learn, it's like we separate from source, but as we learn through these journeys, we get closer and closer and closer and move back toward source, toward that place of oneness.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like we have to know what feeling separate is like first. And part of that separateness is also forgetting that we're whole and complete as we are. And that whole I'm not good enough stuff, and grow, this is my personal belief, that it's our work to remember that we are whole and that we are enough just as we are.
Yeah. I mean, I always put it like this for me, and I'm certainly not an expert in it like you, but it's like, I remember when I was having one of my many sessions with you, it was, I remember this as clear as day, right? Like it happened yesterday. It was like, I'm here because I want to learn and grow and experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, when that wears off and you come out of the session and you're just like, well, I mean, if that place over there is so much greater, why would I even want to choose to come back here, right? But then I look at it from a different perspective, and I'm like, look, there's two types of learning. You can learn something by reading it in a book,
Mm-hmm.
or you can learn something by having an experience. And maybe I'm coming back and we're all coming back and we're all having these, you know, these learning experiences because the experience of going through it teaches us something that we could never get if we were just reading that story from a quote unquote book. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And I love that analogy. And that's exactly it. There's only so much we can gain in a realm that without actually experiencing it. And actually, Michael Newton, one of the questions he asked was about people who intentionally end their lives early. And what kept coming back and being reported was, well, you're coming right back and doing it all over again. The same thing. Yeah,
because there's a lesson there that wasn't learned.
Yes, it's important we go through these experiences to learn. And when we do them, and with the gain the perspective and connection with another part of ourselves that is infinite, it just helps so much to be able to lean into that through the life challenges that we experience. But that said, there are very real that desire to be there because it does feel so much better is very real. And so what we want to do is help anchor that in to just that experience, and so that people can embody that in their lives, maybe provide some symbol or message or something to help remind them to carry that forward. Even bringing concrete objects that help to remember that experience forward can be helpful because, yeah, life happens.
Well, what do you enjoy most about the work that you do, Jennifer? What keeps you going doing this? And what keeps you learning?
It's working with other people. It's the experiences of being able to witness these journeys and transformations that people go through. I'm in awe on a daily basis, just being able to see the courage that people take of stepping into that space, the transformations that happen in their lives. I mean, look at you, like your whole life has changed.
Well, thanks to you.
Right. Well, yeah, but you did the work. I mean, I consider myself just a guide connecting you to that voice. But when people listen to that voice, it's just like, wow. I mean, things happen, big changes happen. It's incredible to witness that.
Well, I appreciate that. If people don't know, by the way, if people don't know, the second that I met Jennifer, I felt like we had known each other for years. I mean, I had that instinctive, I don't know what it was. I knew we just flew into a conversation, and it's like, I know you, right? I mean, I just met you, quote unquote, met you, but I know you. And it was so refreshing. I mean, it wasn't strange. It wasn't weird. It wasn't bizarre. It was just like comfortable, you know?
Very comfortable. And I've had that experience with a few other individuals in my life. And there is this sense of knowing. And I had that recognition as well, you know, and to this day, like you said, like we could go months or years without speaking, and then we pick up right where we left off. It's like that. Yeah.
And you don't find, in my opinion, you don't find that, you know, around every corner. That's
no, you don't.
very unique, in my opinion.
Very, absolutely. What I will say is it's happening more and more to people. All recently, I would say in the past couple of years, especially, it is very unique and it's super special. And it's starting, like people are having these awakenings that are happening. And it's very interesting. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix documentary that came out called Surviving Death. But episode 1 talks about near-death experiences. And then I wasn't crazy about episodes 2 through 4, the way they were presented. But episode 5 picks back up on children, young children who've had memories of past lives. And they bring in researchers into it. And it's interesting that more of these things are coming out into the public. But I would say for the past few years, I'm seeing more and more people have these awakenings. And now they're able to gain evidence. The University of Virginia does a lot of research around this very thing.
Yeah, so there is a growing awareness.
Yeah.
And now you're booked out a couple of months, correct?
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's busy. It is. Yeah, it's really busy. People are wanting to experience and connect and discover it's those bigger questions. Why am I here? Kids are coming in wide open. these days. A lot of kids are lucid dreaming, having experiences with consciousness. They're connecting with deceased relatives that they don't know, they've never met at very, very young ages when they can barely talk. They're telling people about things that they know. Yeah.
That's perfect. So now if people want to find out more about you, Jen, more about your practice, maybe book a session, where do they go to find you?
Yep. So they can go to Jennifer Catlin, CATLIN.com, and all the information is up there. I do have a link on there for a free phone consult, or people can email me. There's a form they can fill out to email for information. I just ask that people contact me first just to make sure I know which direction is going to be the best direction for them to go in before booking. And I'm actually in process of, super exciting, I'm actually taking a couple of weeks, well, sort of off. I'll be working part-time at the end of March with some regular clients I see, but otherwise going to take a little bit of time off because I'm in process of developing some group programs where we're working through all the stuff I do with individual clients, but it's going to be available for groups and some soul exploration stuff as well. Yeah.
And you also do virtual work too, right?
Yeah. All the group stuff will be virtual.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do. Yeah. I see clients both in person and virtually on an individual basis as well.
And you also have a school, a hypnosis school. So if somebody wants to learn how to do what you do and start their own practice, how do they do that?
Yeah. So we're actually in the process of probably changing the name, but right now it's Raleigh School of Hypnosis.com. It's not based in Raleigh anymore because the trainings are virtual now, but they are live trainings. So people can get information there or contact me. We're teaching transpersonal and spiritual hypnosis.
Yeah, and before we hopped onto this podcast, I mean, I know it's Raleigh, right? The name, North Carolina, but you were telling Lauren and myself, you were saying that you have students from all over the world. I mean, from Turkey, from Australia.
Yeah. People, because the trainings are, well, even when they weren't virtual, people would travel long distances to come take the trainings in person. The benefit now of them going virtual, we didn't have that permission from our certifying organization before until COVID happened. And then we tried it out and students gave very positive feedback. Some of our students back when it happened had both in person half of the training and then virtual half. And we got very positive feedback about the virtual. So it's been virtual ever since. And the benefit is people can be home in their comfortable environment. They don't have to travel, pay for the travel costs as well. So it also saves money on that end.
You know, I've told you this for years, Jen. I'm still waiting for the book. I'm still waiting for you because you have so much knowledge and so many stories that you could tell and teach and instruct and help a lot of people with. I'm still waiting for that. And I want my signed copy.
Eventually when it comes, I'm still waiting too. But yeah, actually writing is something I do feel very more and more drawn to do. And so I think something like that will be coming out at some point. I have teens at home. And so probably I think as they get a bit older, I think it'll end up happening.
You've got a lot of different, coals in the fire. Is that how they say that?
Yeah, right. It's true. Yes.
Very exciting.
That's why the mindfulness practice helps a lot.
Yes. It's uplifting. I mean, you're serving people and making, like you said, transformations. I love the way you answered that. I thought that was such a really great answer. And one thing you said about anybody can do this, I hope people really heard that and that it's been demystified enough that they, make that call with you and check it out.
Yeah, it is. Anybody can experience this. It's just that desire to really connect with another perspective, that higher part of yourself, and to discover why you're here and fulfill it. It's empowering.
Groups sound so interesting too, because I think you kind of like what you touched on a little bit ago about soul groups, or you might come in with a sense of karma with a person, whatever perspective, right? Positive or negative karma. So it's just such an interesting topic.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much that can be explored in the spirit realm when we're talking about life between lives. Soul group is one of those places people might visit. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, that could be a whole other hour. Could go on and on.
Don't you just love her passion, Lauren? I mean, you can
Yes.
hear it in her words.
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I said you can hear her passion in her words as she talks about this.
Well, we get this privilege the listeners won't have of seeing her and like this sweet demeanor that you have. I mean, you've got like every credential imaginable. You know, you had the intuition, and I love that you said that you were a super analytical left brain thinker, because I know that people identified as those types might think, oh, past life, like that, you know, I don't believe in it, and so I'm not going to have any value. And I would think whether or not you believe in it, it's not going to have any deterrent. You know, you get something shifted that you hadn't even known was blocked.
Sure. It's like why whatever shows up for somebody is going to be different than what shows up for somebody else. And it's the objective is more about how can this help you in your life today? That's what I really want to know. How can this help you transform? And I didn't believe in it at one time either. I didn't. And then I had my own experiences along with a near-death experience, and here I am. It calmed my left brain down quite a bit.
I was all out of questions, but that brings up another one. So going all the way back to your New York days, right? When you were up there as a school psychologist, if someone had told you, Jen, that you'd be where you are now, doing what you do now, if someone had told you then, what would you have told them?
They're crazy. No way, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? Past life stuff? That's way woo. Too woo-woo for me.
Way woo.
But see, I always think it's so interesting because I mean, it's like I mean, you know, you say that about you. I know Lauren and I have had discussions about this too. It's like if someone had told me I'd be doing this, you know, before you and I met, Jen, right? Because I think that's what really planted the seed for me. But I mean, if someone had told me I'd be doing what I do now before we met, I'd be like, what is hypnosis? What is that?
Right?
Right. And I know Lauren was the same way. I mean, Lauren was saying, you know, she just never, I mean, she had an interest, right? But she didn't really realize that she'd be doing this as a profession. And it's amazing how things like that develop and happen. And there's such, in my opinion, there's such an energy and a power behind just allowing this to organically happen, because now the three of us have such an opportunity to go out into the world and help so many other people find their power and find their truth. And I think that's such a beautiful thing.
When you talk about that energy, I mean, I'm sure Lauren can feel that too. Like it's like a deep sense of connection to what it is you're doing. And it doesn't always have to be related to your job. I mean, our purpose in life can be so many things. It can be smiling at a stranger, like whatever, being present and really noticing. But when whatever it is that lights your fire, that lights you up, that you feel like your whole being is saying yes to, that's it. Like you're connecting to your higher self and allowing your intuition, which I think is higher self, to have a voice and to come through and be embodied in your life. And that to me is like more empowering than anything.
Sure. Absolutely.
Oh, well said.
You don't have to look at others for the answers. You don't have to, you already have it all within you. I'm not conducting sessions to tell people what they need to know or what they need to do. I can actually take a step back and just guide them to their own voice. They have the answers within.
That's exactly right.
Mic drop.
I think we're gonna have to invite Jen back, because I mean we could go off in a million different directions here, and she has so much knowledge and wisdom to share. I mean, I should have put this in the bio when I introduced you, but you are actually on the board at the Newton Institute, right? You're on the educational board over there.
I'm on the educational committee.
Excuse me. Yeah. The educational committee.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're well. I mean, it's not like, you know, you're just it's not just like you've studied what they do. I mean, you're affiliated. I mean, you know, with what they do. I mean, you're there. You're part of the team. You're part of that organization.
Sure. Yeah. It's everybody, you know, who holds various positions in the Newton Institute are volunteering there. They're all volunteer positions, but that's how important this work is to us. That's how much we've all benefited and connected to it. Is that we want to help spread this and help other people to connect with that infinite part of themselves, which can help them get them through these sometimes difficult journeys and moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a shift in perspective and any context that can support a person, right? I mean, we are impassioned, like you said, Jen, by what we
Yeah.
do, and it's so exciting. I mean, this is why we do it. We love it because it's the best thing. I think we should go to career days. It sounds like if maybe we had been introduced to some hypnotists, because we all have this perspective. Like a hypnotist has the swinging watch and the big black and white spiral glasses, and it's like I haven't seen a hypnotist like that.
Isn't that funny, right? They're just gonna make you unconscious.
Yeah, it's like trance for no value. Like that's not what it is. It's
No, not at all. Not at all. It's a very empowering process, not scary. And I can tell you that I used to be somebody who was a chronic worrier, anxious, super strong inner critic, people pleaser, all of the above. And it's not that there aren't moments where those things again aren't activated or triggered. I have much more awareness around it now and a lot less identification with it. So it's shifted. Like that's not who I am. That's just what might arrive in a moment. That might be the visitor that shows up in that moment, but I am not that. And it's changed my own life. And so it is exciting to be able to share that with others and to watch others be able to come through those experiences. Yeah, to connect with something deeper and that higher wisdom within themselves.
I love that. I wonder if Jen, your protocol is what's still like embedded subconsciously in Troy's head, because Troy is always just like bettering himself. And it's this quote you said, which I wanted to see if you would be interested to co-brand for our merch. How can you change your life today? Question mark. I mean, if we ask ourselves that question every single day and just chipped away at all the little stuff, we really start to see the shift. You know, Ben Hardy, the Personality Isn't Permanent book author.
Mm.
And it's because if we don't bring our mindfulness to these things, then they just start to spiral out.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Life will get hold of us and happen instead of really taking hold of life ourselves. And life can change. I have seen experiences change. I've seen relationships change, even between parents and kids. As parents, a lot of times we're caring for other people instead of just caring for them. And when we can learn to shift all of that and what's not ours and be able to put that down, that in itself can change. I've seen relationships shift without the other person in the room at all. It's really powerful work because we're working with consciousness. It's energy.
I love that. Yeah, when you were talking about people like getting a phone call or something like that about a person they haven't connected to, like those are the synchronicities to me that are really left brain mind blowing.
Oh gosh, I'm somebody who needs a lot of validation, not so much anymore, but when I was first going through my own process and opening to all of this, I needed so much concrete validation or I was not going to believe it. And it just kept showing up and showing up and showing up through my own work and through working with others in ways that I just could not possibly question. And so it's really cool to see those kinds of things happen.
That was why one of the books I was reading at the start of my hypnosis, considerations of a career, was Sylvia Browne's Life on the Other Side.
Yeah.
And she talks about she didn't intend to become a hypnotist. She got into past lives, and she had her team research thousands, what she claims, of cases of, okay, a person is saying they've got a past life when they're in this time period, this place, this was their family, this was their kids, and her team would research it and confirm. And it's like when you look at the data and you can't ignore that we are tapping into something, collective consciousness, actual past lives. Like what's there to debate if you're getting a value and it's a therapy that changes something in your everyday life?
Sure.
No, do it.
Absolutely. And I've had people even connect with deceased loved ones who've come through, and it's like, a lot of people will go, there's nothing wrong with going to see a psychic medium or somebody who can channel their loved one for them. And at the same time, people don't realize that they can do that themselves. They can be their own channeler. They just need to, open.
Whoa.
That's what is happening.
Let's part 2 coming soon, guys.
I could go on and on.
It's so fascinating, truly. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I just love talking to both of you.
See, Lauren, now you know why I say there's only one Jennifer Catlin, and the world needs more
goodness.
Jennifer Catlins, in my opinion.
He doesn't say that about a lot of people. And when he's been fangirling on you.
Aw.
A few weeks ago. I'm in the same club. So yeah, we're pre-purchasers for your book.
Well, that's very sweet. I honestly look up to both of you as well. I think you're both great. And Lauren, it's been such a pleasure to be able to meet you and get to know you. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Well, at our part 2, maybe I will have been a client of yours and we can talk a little about experiences or the groups like that, because I think the synergy that we feel is what you talked on about, just a sense of ease and openness, and you can't ignore it, or why would you?
Yeah. That would be great.
Where can people go again one more time, Jen?
All right. So Jennifer Catlin, CATLIN.com.
And Raleigh Hypnosis School?
Raleigh School of Hypnosis.com. Yes.
Google will direct and correct you.
Yes. And if we change the name of that, since it's not really location dependent anymore, we'll make sure that site forwards on to a new URL.
I'm sure if they just type your name into Google, I mean, they'll find it, right?
Yeah. Especially if combined with the word hypnosis.
Yeah.
There's not hypnotists. And even though your school's pumping them out, like, it is still an underserved market because people just don't know it's a career.
Very much so. That's true. Yeah. We only accept 12 people into the program at a time because we really want a small, intimate environment because people are going through a lot of transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So exciting. All right. Well, we'll be back, guys. Thank you, Team Nation, Jennifer, Troy. I'm honored to have shared this time and everything. I feel great. Appreciate you.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
14th show on February 14th on Valentine's Day. I think we delivered. So thanks, Jennifer. For those listening, make sure you go over and check Jennifer out on her website, and also let us know on Co-Creation Nation on Facebook. Let us know what speakers and what topics you would like us to bring forth and discuss and have on future episodes of our podcast.
Yeah, we'll take questions too, because it's all about being interactive and accessible and demystifying this transformational tool. So check us back next time, guys. Much love. Bye. Awesome.
Yay. That was fun.
It's so, oh my gosh. I think we get in time distortion and just like talk and talk.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, but I do feel energized by it, and even like working with clients, like my need regularly is to like ground myself because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
So do you have a minute to pop on Facebook and we just want to tell the community, like, we filmed an awesome podcast. It'll be up soon. Like, this girl is so cool. Check her out.
Yeah. You want me to stay on?
Yeah, if you have some time.
Sure.
Yeah, we just like a teaser video. That's all it is, or teaser live.
So we're on Zoom, and I can just click a button on Zoom, and it puts it on. Well, I click a few buttons. I wait. I cross my fingers.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't connected that from Zoom yet. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I could.
I'm not a tech person, if you couldn't tell.
I'm not. People think because I
would have fooled me with those gamer.
Right? It's because I have a teenage son.
I think about past lives as like a video game. Like, we're just on a level.
That's what it feels like.
You collect coins, or you, I guess you could.
Yep. That's what I told my son the other day. He's like, yeah, I don't think so, Mom.
It made perfect sense. It's like, because when you finish the level, then you just go to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it didn't quite feel like that, and Jen knows.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I never got to a past life, but you know what? What I got to was far beyond anything that, like a past life would pale in comparison to what I experienced.
Yeah, you got to, you bypass the past life. You just got to merging with oneness.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that as much as I think we could have. That would be a really cool talk. And maybe
Yeah.
we could do even like something live then. We'll see. All right, I'm gonna hit the button. We're gonna go live. You guys ready?
Yep. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Co-Creation Nation. Thanks for popping in with us on Valentine's Day. If you're watching us live, if not, I hope you had a great Valentine's. We just filmed an awesome podcast.
Yes, well, we did with our guest Jennifer Catlin. I think it was supposed to be like a 25 or 30-minute podcast. We completely just disregarded the time on that, and we like doubled the time. That's how much information and knowledge and wisdom Jennifer was able to share with us. So Jennifer, thanks for popping on. So what we normally do is we like to make these Facebook Live videos after the podcast, because these are kind of treated as like teaser videos, so people can actually go out and listen, right? Go over and check out the whole podcast. But we went through so much and we covered so much, but you deal with past life regression and life between lives, among other things, right? But we were having a discussion on the podcast talking about how now in 2021, and this has been going on for the last couple of years, people are starting to become aware, and people are starting to wake up, and people are starting to become more curious of what the possibilities are for them in their lives by exploring a past life or exploring a life between life. I hope I'm getting that correct. You're the expert and not me when it comes to this. I know, being a past client of yours, it really has steered and directed my life into what I do now. But I guess my question for you is, what is the passion that keeps you going? Because I know when you talk, and when you talk about, like when we just had this podcast, the way you say things, I mean, you can just hear the passion in your voice and the passion for the work that you do. What keeps you going to help other people realize their potential, their own potential?
The people I work with is what keeps me going. It's this work just lights me up and fires me up, but it's because of being able to see the transformation that happens. It's so powerful of how people's lives change, or the peace that they gain in these sessions. And to be able to witness that is really incredible and humbling.
You're certified in past life regression hypnotherapy and life between lives hypnotherapy, right? You also serve on the educational committee at the Newton Institute. Can you explain a little bit in a nutshell as to what the Newton Institute is?
Yeah, so the Newton Institute was founded by Dr. Michael Newton, who was a therapist who did research about what happens in the afterlife. Is there an afterlife? And worked with people in these very, very deep trance states, and with over 7,000 people from all different faith backgrounds. And his first book is Journey of Souls. And he wrote about what it was that people describe happens in that deep state once they pass afterlife. And so it's really based on more of the spirit realm, what is happening when we're not incarnated in a life.
Cool.
And so if people don't understand, they can go listen to the podcast, obviously, but to give them a 30,000 foot view here in this short video, if someone's like, well, what's a past life, or what's a life between life? I mean, can you encapsulate that for someone in a nutshell?
Yeah. So with a past life, they're accessing another lifetime that is significant for them in their soul's journey, their higher self's journey, presumably with the belief or assumption that we don't live just this one time and this one experience, but we're living multiple experiences in order to learn and to grow. Although one doesn't have to have a belief in this for this work to be beneficial for them. And so they'll access that a lifetime that is important for them and explore some key points in that life, and then go through transition. And then we do some work after the transition in the spirit realm when they're in what we call soul mind, in order to provide some intervention in that other lifetime that may be impacting their life today. So there can be things that sometimes it can be beneficial to bring things forward that might benefit our lives today from another lifetime. But other times there's things we need to let go that are impacting our lives, that created an energetic imprint And so it helps people to access that information and to be able to provide the intervention in session that's needed to release that.
And I love the way you described your process on the podcast, and you have like an entire protocol and the clinical like background and support, intuition, mindfulness. You have your own like personal experience, which has really connected you to this process. And like you said, anybody can do this. You don't have to believe in it in order to be supported through the experience. And you're the authority. You've got a school teaching other hypnotists how to do this. Any type of hypnosis, and then this state, specialized spiritual and transformational. Super cool to have you on. We're gonna have you. You've got so much that we could dive into.
Thank you so much for having me. It really has been a joy. It's been so much fun to talk to both of you, as always. But of course, I love talking about this topic, and I feel like I could ramble on and on for hours or days, weeks.
Well, that's why we kind of lost all track of time with the podcast, right? I mean, we were trying to budget 30 minutes, and it turned out to be a little over an hour, I think. So if somebody, and by the way, this is a big thing. I mean, if someone doesn't realize that, this is a thing, that this is, a hypnosis practice, I mean, you're booked out. Yeah. And that's, I mean, because people are waking up, they're having this curiosity about themselves, about their lives, about how it can impact their lives today, in terms of how they can step into their own empowerment. So if somebody wants to find out more information about you, Jennifer, where can they go?
They can go to jennifercatlin.com, and all of the information is there. If somebody's interested in training to do this work, we would need to have a conversation first. And that website is RaleighSchoolOfHypnosis.com.
Mm-hmm. And I put your Jennifer Catlin in somewhere.
Okay.
Beside our video or something. Hopefully, I mean, tech.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the comments below.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll connect you guys to Jennifer, and we would love to have you back on, because we were talking about groups and past lives. I mean, guys, check out the podcast. It'll go live in a few weeks, and we'll let you know when it does, because there's a lot of value and a lot of real practical application for something you might have thought was, would you say way woo-woo?
I used to think it was way woo-woo. Here I am.
That's right. Here you are with a successful business. I mean, helping people every day. I mean, what is a greater reward than that, in my opinion?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's just, it touches my heart every day. Like I said, it's very humbling to witness the transformations that people go through. It's really incredible. And as you said, so many people are waking up right now, or they're having these questions about, why am I here? What is the purpose of this life? Is this it? Is there more? What's going on?
Absolutely. Well, make sure you head on over and listen to the podcast. Make sure you head on over to our website, also hypnosisinaction.com. We have a couple of hypnosis audios over there as well for you to get and listen to, so you can relax in 2021 and be your best self. So thank you, Jennifer, for hopping on. Thank you, my co-host, Lauren Hall, the great Lauren Hall. I appreciate you as well. Thank you, everyone, for hopping on, and go listen to Jennifer's podcast. It'll be up in a couple of weeks.
Okay. I was like, wait, it's not there yet.
It's going to be up in a couple of weeks.
It'll be up very soon. Yeah. And we'll let you guys know as soon as it is, because it's awesome. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you, both of you.